Thank you for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Daylight Academy. I'm working at the University of Applied Sciences in Lucerne, 70%, and 30% I'm self-employed and at Chronolight. And the Daylight Academy is an international membership organization, and it aims at connecting scientists from different fields that can include scientists who are investigating how daylight affects algae in a Swiss lake, for example, or scientists who are investigating on how to make solar cells more efficient. But it also involves architects and many other professionals. But the common of these architects and scientists and professionals is the interest in daylight. And the Daylight Academy is also encouraging creativity and innovation through this interdisciplinary, through these various fields. And it's also trying to disseminate the knowledge among the specialists, but also to the public. I'm in the presentation mode, that's why I'm a bit confused. And here are some examples of what the Daylight Academy is doing. Some typical activities like the interdisciplinary working groups, which I will show some examples later. But then it's also creating public events, communication and public events like the Daylight Awareness Week, for example. And then we also have annual conferences among the members. So these are some examples of some current Daylight Academy projects. There's one project which is about the role of daylight for humans. And this working group is also trying to develop a human light exposure database. That means that we are collecting data from various devices on how much people have been exposed to daylight. And one of these devices, if you can see my video, is this little light dosimeter. This is a device which we have developed here in Lucerne, and you can attach it to glasses. That means that you are measuring quite precisely near the eye what light dose is reached by the eye. And the special characteristic of this device is also that it does not only measure illuminance, but the 5 alpha-opic EDIs, so weighted for the 5 photoreceptors, light weighted with a sensitivity of the 5 photoreceptors. And then we have a project or a working group working on the aspect of if daylight can protect children from myopia, and our aim there is also to publish a position paper on these aspects. Then there is a project about a room with a view. So how important is a view outside, and how important or how good has a quality to be when you're looking out a window. Then one working group is about daylight metrics and the measurement and the data, and also techniques on how to measure daylight and how these techniques differ through different disciplines. And some past Daylight Academy projects is a working group where we looked at the relevance of daylight for humans, and this ended in a publication, which I will show in a minute. And one working group focused on the difference of daylight to electric light, and this also resulted in a publication, which I will show in a minute. And the Daylight Ambassadors is still running, but it has been running for quite a while. This project I will also explain in a minute. And then last year we had a summer school on measuring light and illumination in Switzerland, a 1-week summer school. And this is one example of a project outcome, a publication with names you might know: Anna Wertz Justice, Deborah Skeen, and Miriam Münch. And they published this nice paper about the relevance of daylight for humans. And I think this figure summarizes it very nicely, that actually although we know it's quite difficult to really point toward daylight and the health benefits, but what we definitely know is that a lack of daylight can negatively affect us, and that can lead to, for example, a weakened immune system, to mental health issues, to physiological and psychological stress, to an increased risk of cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes. And sorry, if I press forward, my slides change a bit strange. And this is a publication from Martine Knoop, Daylight, What Makes a Difference. And there we looked at different aspects about the different features of daylight, like the dynamics, the intensity, polarization, and so on. But obviously now I can't go into each detail, but one aspect I want to point out a little bit is the spectrum, and it's also difficult to really look at the different effects of the spectral characteristics on humans. But there was one study which was quite controlled, where we looked at two different light spectra, one being the blue, one being the traditional or conventional LED spectrum with this typical blue peak and a yellow belly. And the orange line is a so-called daylight LED. So the spectrum is a little bit closer to daylight than a normal spectrum. It's still not a daylight spectrum, but it's closer to daylight. And the important thing about this study is that visually you could not differentiate between the two lights. So the illuminance and the color temperature were the same in the two conditions. But what we found, and now I hope I cannot go into the result. Sorry. Okay. So what we found in this laboratory study is a better visual comfort with the daylight LED. So although they could not see the difference, the participants, between the two lights, they still reported a better visual comfort with the daylight LED. They also reported better well-being. They also reported less sleepiness during the day. So all subjective aspects. But we also measured sleep with polysomnography, so with EEG during the night. And what we could see is that when they were exposed to 16 hours of the daylight LED, they had more deep sleep during the light as compared to a normal LED. And then I'm coming to the Daylight Ambassadors. The Daylight Ambassadors is a working group who are trying to spread the word about the importance of daylight. And we created a flyer so far, which I sent to Jan. You can distribute that to everyone who is interested, or you can contact me if you want a PDF of this flyer. And in this flyer, we summarize for the general public the important aspects about daylight, why daylight is important for us. And we actually, in this working group, we are convinced that people are made for daylight, and there are there's also some evidence which I've shown previously, so that if there is a lack of daylight, we suffer from disrupted biological rhythms, from sleep and mood disorders, and then obviously also inadequate vitamin D levels. Myopia might be related to daylight. So we are trying to bring or to motivate people to bring more daylight into buildings, and because we believe this could prevent many illnesses, increase well-being, and increase performance by providing optimal visual qualities. And we are also trying to promote this importance of daylight, or of good light in general, through not only through the general public, but also to legislations and to organizations like the World Health Organization, for example. There we had recently we had a presentation where we presented about the right light at the right time, and we also gave an introduction to the non-visual effects of light and the importance of daylight for humans. And this is just showing the steering committee. My last slide, basically. You might know Manuel Spitschan, Katharina Wulff, all famous scientists in this field. Yeah. And with that, thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, Oliver, thank you very much for a nice overview. The reason that Oliver and I decided to put the Daylight Academy on the agenda of the Good Light Group is that the Good Light Group makes use of a lot of the stuff of the Daylight Academy. In the Daylight Academy, a lot of all the scientists who bring all the knowledge about the effects of light on health and well-being and mental health and so on, are gathered there. I always feel that the Good Light Group and the Daylight Academy are complementary to each other. The Daylight Academy always promotes, like us, that the best light you can get is daylight. Because daylight is always the right light at the right moment. If you have a normal sleep-wake cycle where you are awake during daytime and sleep at night. And the second step that the Daylight Academy is always promoting is that if you're indoors, be as close as possible to windows, because through the windows, most of the daylight gets to your eyes and to your IPRGCs. The next step, of course, is that many people, more than 90% of the people, do have a daytime indoor activity and are still shielded from daylight. And then you need to do something with electric light. Like the slide you showed, where if you have LEDs that simulate daylight as good as possible, that they have a better effect on people's wellness, basically, than ordinary LEDs. So that's the reason that we put the Daylight Academy on the agenda of this meeting. And I will ask Anna also, together with Oliver, also to write a blog on this, and have the Daylight Guide then also made available through our website, if the Daylight Academy allows that. So Oliver, thank you very much for an excellent overview. There is some time left for a couple of questions. If anybody raises his hand or her hand, then there's a question from Sarah. What was the UN's response to your presentation, Oliver?
Really good question. Yeah, they answered me by email that it was a really nice presentation and it was really interesting. And then I invited them to participate in the next Daylight Academy meeting, but then I haven't heard back from them so far.
Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah, I have one, Jan, Marijke.
Marijke, hi.
Hi. Oliver, are there more plans for more working groups already?
Oh,
also, I mean, we have been discussing with the Good Light Group to do something like a citizen science project. Could that be something that we could do together with Daylight Academy?
I think so, yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think there are some more working groups active and under discussion currently. I didn't present every working group in this slide, in this overview.
Okay. Comment from Jim. Technologies are available, but the costs are prohibited because people place priority on energy efficiency over human wellness. Yeah, of course, that's so Oliver, I don't know if you want to react on that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think for chickens, for plants, the people are taking more care about the good light for chicken and for plants than for people, because chicken can produce eggs and plants produce food. Yeah, but yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it's a big point. It's one of the reasons of existence of the Good Light Group, that we want to bring.
And I mean, one argument I hear very often, or one question I hear very often is, so can you prove that people are more efficient and more productive under good light? And I say, no, I can't prove. There's no proof that they are more efficient or more productive. But my former colleague, Ruta Lasauskaite, she did an interesting study where she did cognitive tests, performance tests, and she tested different color temperatures, so blue enriched light and warm light. And she didn't see any cognitive differences in cognitive performance, but she could measure, and not only subjectively, but also physiologically, she could measure that to do the same cognitive task with the same performance, you need more effort under warm light during the day. And that was only within 1 hour or so. And under the cold white light, under the blue enriched light, they needed less effort to do the same cognitive task. So it's like being at work, and you have to do your work anyway. You have to do it whatever the environment is. If it's too cold, too warm, too loud, too silent, maybe. But you have to do your work, and that's what we are trying to do every day. But with a bright light, we might do it with less effort.
Yeah, you said you cannot prove that if people are in daylight or in good light indoors, that they are more efficient or have higher cognitive performances. Sarah, in the previous presentation, made some assumptions about that. But is there proof that people are less inefficient? Yeah, or when they are in good light?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because probably inefficiency in a sense of absenteeism or presenteeism is probably better measurable than increase of efficiency. Okay. Sarah, you have a question?
Yes. There was a study, I think almost back in the 80s by Osram in Germany, and they did a reading test, speed of reading. And that showed an increased speed in reading with the right lighting versus bad lighting. So, and that's 40 years ago. I feel like there's been enormous advancements made in our knowledge around how light impacts efficiency and cognitive performance. But perhaps I'm misunderstanding your position.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm convinced that good lighting is important, but if you really try to prove it scientifically, then it's really difficult to prove it evidence-based in an evidence-based way. So this study, I don't know the Osram study, but I'm sure there are scientists who might argue that well, it's obvious that you have, I don't know the study, but that's like they typically argue that when you have good light at around 1000 lux and you compare it to bad light at around 100 lux, then your reading speed is faster, and that doesn't have to do anything with your cognitive performance, or it's just because it's bad lighting. So I don't know these studies. It's just an example how some scientists argue about proving that good light is really evidence-based improving your performance.
Yeah. In view of time, because it's 5 o'clock, so we need to finish, otherwise other people slip out. So I would like to round it off. I see that Daniel also raises his hand, or yeah, Joachim. Perhaps Joachim, if it's a really short question, you can do it. Otherwise, if you type it in the chat, that we keep.
Yeah, it's just really short.
Okay.
So yeah, so I just wanted to allude to the fact that for example, Jennifer Veach and Guy Newsom have done some studies on organizational productivity, and then put lighting into that sort of category around productivity. And I think to some extent, it actually shows that that productivity in a modern day world is sort of really complex. It's not just reading a book and turn on and turn off a light. So I think perhaps some of the models that we use to describe what productivity, even productivity is, we might need to update, and then look at how light then influences some of those improves these individual sort of things that has an impact on organizational productivity. And again, Jennifer Veach and Guy Newsom have done some initial work on this.